Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video about my personality disorder, my narcissistic personality disorder. Do keep in mind that I am not a licensed professional, so with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about projections. I'm going to bundle a whole bunch of things in this video because it was a conversation that I had with some friends that, you know, inspired this video in a way, and more or less I probably, you know, said some things in other videos that I'll probably repeat again, but I guess I wanted to be more specific about something, which is why this video is on the topic of like projections specifically. Because when I was having, said conversation with, these certain friends of mine, one of them pointed out that a lot of the things that I say about relationships, or when I say relationships, I more so mean specifically a relationship between a man and a woman as a straight man myself. I wanted to share some thoughts about, I guess, how I kind of interpret that and how I kind of, view that. So here's the thing. After, resting in my thoughts a bit as to whether or not I'm somebody that, projects a lot in relationships or, I guess just yeah, relationships. I guess when it has to do with other people, like existing in general. I thought about it more and I thought to myself, I don't actually know what the difference is, to be honest. Or what do I mean by the difference, quote unquote? I don't know what a projection is not within the context of like human relationships, basically. Because this does remind me of an older video that I've made where I talk about loneliness, and a lot of that I mention what's called Narcissist talks about loneliness, if I remember correctly. Well, to give a quick rundown, I did talk about how it doesn't seem surprising to me if other people are able to like backstab or like betray you. It can be unexpected, but it's not surprising because you will never know someone's like true inner world. Everything is just on the outside, what they portray, what they project, quote unquote. So I kind of just think of human relationships in general as just like this major projection. Like everything might as well, not be real. I mean, life is a projection itself. I mean, we all die and we're just distracting ourselves, in the meantime. So who's to say what is or what isn't? We're kind of just projecting and imposing our ways, whether or not we realize it. And I think a lot of this is also what contributes to what you often hear me talk about, how everything is just a hierarchy, who's on top and who's at the bottom. So I'll give more context about the conversation I was having with these said friends. I don't remember why we were even talking about this to begin with. Well, I guess I can kind of figure it's because, I don't know, we talk about like psychology a lot. So a lot of that has to do with like human relationships and whatnot. So I'll be honest about something. I don't particularly like women that make the first move, or at least I'm inclined to think that I don't usually like women that make the first move. I mean, I do kind of get when guys are like, "Oh, why is it always up to a man to approach a woman? Why can't a woman ever pursue us?" Blah blah blah, quote unquote. And yeah, I mean, trust me, I get it. The expectation that as a man you always have to initiate with a girl, it does, put more pressure on us, to get things going in comparison to, I guess, the standards of dating when it comes to a woman's, typical experiences and whatnot. So like I do get that. Although I was in this particular mindset, and this is why I'm gonna say I'm more inclined to not prefer women that initiate or, come on to me rather than have me, I don't know, approach them, let's say, and take it from there, is because I think who initiates the relationship sets the tone for who's gonna lead, control in that relationship. And I guess as a lot of you can figure, oh yeah, obviously a narcissist wants control, blah blah blah. I do have a particular video about that. I think it's literally called Narcissist Talks About Control. So, that's another video to check out if you didn't check out the previous older video that I was talking about, Narcissist Talks About Loneliness. Yeah, go into that one because I expand more further on that. And I was talking about how I guess I would prefer women that have a slightly more conservative edge in this regard, expecting that, oh, a guy has to go out of his way to, I guess to be blunt about it, impress her or something, quote unquote. And then eventually she has to lower herself down, I guess, and like drop her defenses in order for you as a man to, eventually take the lead. And perhaps I should have mentioned this too in my Narcissist Talks About Red Pill video. Well, I guess when watching that video, you probably do get the sense that I'm already implying that in a way, but I also did criticize the red pill in that video, so don't think of me as just this, I don't know, extremely red pill dude, quote unquote. Like, there are things that I'm inclined to agree and things that I'm still kind of, you know, I guess, do find questionable. So, okay, I was talking to my friends and I was explaining to them that I would prefer to lead in a relationship because that makes me more comfortable. Like if I set the rules, if I set the, whatever, it's more predictable. There's less unpredictability. And okay, I'll be honest, when I think of a woman that is, I guess, more straightforward and more outspoken, it kind of gives me the impression that she's not necessarily going to be devoted and focused on me, quote unquote, because if she can easily, march herself up to me, let's say, and be like, "Oh, I like you, whatever," like this or that. Who knows how many guys, that she's easily impressed by, or blah blah blah, and things like that. Like who knows that like any guy that attracts her fancy in like any way, she'll just like kind of go up to them. So I don't get this sense of like, oh, she'll be easily glued onto me, which I obviously would typically prefer just so I can have like more control about things. And they were mentioning to me that like oh, it seems like it's kind of screwed either way because I would have a problem with a girl who, is more straightforward, but then a girl that's also more, let's say, conservative and like, closing herself off, I would still have to like chip at her, quote unquote, until like she drops her like defenses, quote unquote. But then it kind of got me thinking that, are relationships not just a series of manipulations? I know a lot of people would obviously disagree with me, but I'm talking about this from my point of view. So I'm trying to, you know, do my best to explain this obviously from like my point of view because that's kind of what I easily, think, quote unquote. Because like if you watch my video, Narcissist talks about love bombing as well. Jesus, I've never referenced this many like older videos in one video, but there you go. What I remember I was talking about is that I kind of just do see relationships as people, love bombing each other just in order to like, receive it back because I fail to see how a relationship is not just an agreed upon transaction between two people to like, glaze each other's like ego and like butter each other up basically and stuff like that. So I was thinking you know, about this. And sure, yeah, I agreed that it is a problem more or less, but it's just because I have a hard time thinking that like there's actually true, genuine connections with people. Because a relationship, from like my point of view, is no different than a chess game. There's always anticipation on like what you will do, how you will strategize, or like whatever, and like things like that. So I don't really see anything like genuinely coming into place. I kind of just think like, oh yeah, obviously people are going to talk about like soulmates. People are going to talk about like true love. Like obviously, like that's all part of the act. That's all part of like the role play in which we butter each other up so well. Because basically, love is no different than a drug addiction, and I talk about that in my Narcissist Talks About Love Bombing video, I believe. Yeah. So basically, we're just hooked on drugs that we're naturally giving each other. And I acknowledge that there are women in relationships with men who would arguably hold like a higher rank. And like, again, I'm not trying to come off like full red pill here or like something like that. But in the least offensive way possible, I'm kind of starting to wonder if like by nature men are supposed to manipulate women more than women manipulate men. Because sure, I do believe that in order for, to get at a woman, essentially the ball is in her court, basically. You have to like, like woo her. But essentially, once she's able to drop that and, everything naturally falls into place, she will naturally follow your command and lead. And because when you think about it, women typically ignite oxytocin in their head more often than men. This is why 9 times out of 10, when there's a friends with benefits relationship, a woman is typically the one ruining it because that's the thing that's, so destructive about oxytocin, quote unquote. That's why, when people talk about like, oh, we do stupid things for love, like, yes, it's because it's basically we've rewired our brains when we, engage in the act of like love, basically. So I don't know why, but like nature just set it up that way. It would seem like, for example, when, a man, God, I can't talk. When a man and a woman, engage in like sexual relations, women are able to have, multiple orgasms. Like that's what the research would say. So if they, have multiple orgasms typically than men, they release more oxytocin in their head. That's why, you know, they naturally fall for a guy harder once the, copulation period suddenly begins, because with like less oxytocin, it's easier for men. I mean, see, this is exactly like the dangerous territory, because I don't want to make it sound like men aren't obviously able to like attach to women and whatnot, but I'm just trying to point out that like this is why typically there's like higher inclinations for, men running things. And it seems like by nature, it's supposed to, be that way. Or it's like, like, why is it the case in like so many love stories, for example, and it happens in real life? Our life imitates art imitates life, whatever. Yeah, basically that. Like for example, there's a woman, she can hate a man, she can go off on him, and this is portrayed as like a very like cutesy moment in like a lot of like love stories or something, and then he kisses her out of nowhere. And then suddenly, maybe she runs away and she hides in the corner, and it's like, oh my gosh, she feels like butterflies in her stomach or like whatever. And it's because of like the oxytocin she received from that kiss, right? So her brain is more easily able to be wired than like a man's, like brain typically is, within the notion of, oxytocin. So if you were to work things in your favor, because basically all you're doing is projecting stuff, and life is basically, relationships in life are basically just like a chess game, like more or less, even though like a lot of people don't want to like admit it or not. So then why wouldn't you want to take the woman that is more closed off and guarded, because that will make it more accomplishing, basically. And not to mention, when you're going about that like relationship, your influence is obviously stronger and, much more powerful. Whereas essentially, if this like free flowing woman is just like, going all over the place, it's like, it's kind of off putting. And especially if you're trying to get a relationship that's typically like based off like monogamy or something, like I can't not think that like, okay, everything about it is basically, just self-centered, basically. So when I do think of a relationship, it's not even a matter of like what's right or like what's, like logical. I guess that's simply why people say, oh, all's fair in love and war, because you're just stupid. Like you're no different than a crackhead down the street saying a bunch of like incomprehensible, like gibberish or like whatever. But yet this is the only socially acceptable like addiction, quote unquote. So I don't know. To like wrap this all up, I look at relationships and I'm just like, yeah, I do think it's a projection. I do think I am putting one over myself in every single relationship that, I have. And yeah, it's manipulation. Even if I acknowledge that I don't make sense, but I can impose my way because I know the right emotional things to say. I know what specific connotations will trigger this or will activate oxytocin when, you know, I say this or do this for somebody, and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, you're not that, bad of a person. I can trust you more than like other people, because like, see, that's what I fail to understand, because like if we're engaging in this service where we're just going to like love bomb each other constantly, why do we have to talk about like our own like independence and whatnot? Which I guess is kind of contradicting, because I'm contradictory here, because I did say that in a video. Yeah, and it is true. I struggle to see my individuality, and honestly, if I did see my individuality more in a relationship, that would like help it out. But like, I guess when I'm just talking about like love, and I guess like how it works, or like relationships and like projecting like in general, then you know, I don't know. It just seems like a trap either way, because either someone else is your wind up toy or you become the wind up toy for like somebody else. I fail to see how anyone is supposed to know that this is like a true, genuine connection when, like, you know, it's love is just a manipulation of brain chemistry. And when you manipulate someone's brain chemistry, is that supposed to be different than power? I don't think it's any different than, like, power, honestly. So yeah, I guess to like put this all in perspective, yeah, I think there's a lot to project when you exist in life, when you're in relationship with other people, not even necessarily with like, love or something, quote unquote, but it's like, yeah, everything is control for your security. So at least this is what I've always thought, to be honest. So